But let's continue now on this story. Safety in some of the buildings in the inner city is now in sharp focus following this morning's tragedy. Joining us to discuss this further is Wynand Engelbrecht, Chief Fire Officer for Fire Ops SA. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, sir. So we know emergency services in the country are overwhelmed currently, and we've seen them working throughout the day from 1 o'clock in the morning, as you've heard from our reporter Hasina Gori, saying that it took emergency services something like 2 hours to put the fire out, and some longer just to get most of those people out of that building. Just talk to us about how concerned you are about some of the state of the buildings that we are seeing in Johannesburg CBD particularly.
Hello, Wynand. Yeah, firstly, of course, it took longer than 2 hours to put the fire out. I mean, we were there on the scene for approximately 8.5 hours or 9 hours altogether, working side by side with Joburg EMS. And it certainly took longer. And the only reason it took longer was that because we first had to attend to rescuing the people and extracting them from the building. As far as the safety of the buildings are concerned, this is a story that we've heard before. When the Bank of Lisbon burned down a few years ago, then we heard there were 53 buildings in the city that concerned both COCTA and the municipal structure, and that something seriously urgent was going to be done about it. And here we are now, a few years later, and more lives than just the 3 firefighters that was lost in Bank of Lisbon. Now we're sitting with 73 lives, and we've been warning against this. It's a ticking time bomb, and it is going to happen again and again in the city, and not just in this city, but in this country, because this pattern has become a trend. The buildings are not safe. They are being taken over by elements that just do not care or do not understand life safety and fire safety. And so I cannot see how the council will resolve this overnight.
And in fact, one of the EMS officials earlier said that this is something that he has never seen before. You mentioned, of course, the Bank of Lisbon, and we know, firefighters were also amongst those that sadly lost their lives, partly also because of, just how conducive or not conducive those buildings have been, even for fire and rescue. Could this disaster have been prevented?
Well, I've been fighting, I've been an active firefighter this year for 50 years. It's some kind of a record somewhere, I'm sure. And I've never seen this, we've never had this kind of death toll in this country or on the continent for that matter, ever. So it's a first, and I wish I could say a last, but the maintenance of equipment, both in the fire service and also in the buildings, is of great concern. If a building like this is hijacked, and I absolutely hate the term because we look at a building that's on fire as a structure that have got lives in them, and we look at that. And so, but I hear the term being thrown around, and so let's talk about that term. So when a building is hijacked, almost one of the first things is that people build shacks inside of the structure, inside of the floors, right into the basement, and they strip out firefighting systems and they sell it as scrap metal. And then they start chipping away civils or concrete work in the basements, and they cut out the reinforcing and sell that as scrap metal, and so that compromises the structure. So around about 5 o'clock this morning, the Fire Safety Division quite rightly stepped in, and they put a stop to all operations, rescue and firefighting, for a period, just so we could make sure that the building was actually still accessible. And so the structure of the building speaks of the trend that we are looking at in the country. If buildings are not maintained, and this is a council building, it belongs to the council. If the same city council, if I come as a business person and I say I want to do business in this building, they compel me to comply with the building regulations, yet they themselves, with all the money that they've got available, don't comply. And so unless the city council takes the lead and actually be exemplary and show us how they are concerned about life safety and how they actually do something about the situation, there's no reason that we should take them seriously. And if we don't take them seriously, it means that the poor people that move into those buildings won't take them seriously either. And so now we've got people jumping instead of people escaping through escape routes, which don't exist. And so partly it is because the Fire Safety Division does not even have on record when last they actually made recommendations about that building.
And as you say, I mean, just speaking to some of my colleagues, also speaking to several people who are on the scene, we saw several buildings not too far from this one in question that looked very dilapidated, but there are people staying in there. And as you say, they are living in a home, homemade shacks, if I can call it that, that is really not suitable for human dwelling. There is going to be a press briefing in a few minutes' time, I'm told, by the emergency services. Of course, for this particular incident, we don't know what caused the fire. They have been speculating between one or two scenarios, one being, tampering with cables, other being maybe somebody was trying to, heat the room. It could be a candle. What are you assessing at the moment to have been the cause at this point in time?
Well, firstly, I never venture in that direction because that's just folly. There's not a single individual in this council that can today say with authority what it actually caused this fire. You cannot determine the cause of a fire by guessing, and you can't determine it by asking questions of bystanders. You've got to approach the matter scientifically. They've got to appoint an individual that is actually independent and that is not only qualified, but well-skilled and well-experienced as a fire investigator that can give them an independent opinion of what had happened. You cannot determine it in 8 hours while people are still running around in the building and trying to rescue people and looking for bodies. And so that just, as far as I'm concerned, is wishful thinking. Nobody's going to be able to do that, and certainly I will not venture there. That would be rushing in with hobnailed boots, I guess.
And finally, Mr. Engelbrecht, before I let you go, I mean, you spoke earlier about how you don't know how the city is going to wrap out its head in terms of just coming up with plausible solutions in as far as this historic problem is concerned in the immediate term. But what would you like to see happen, in the next couple of hours, particularly because we know not too far from that particular building that has burnt down, there are other buildings of similar nature?
Well, you can't. Doing something now is a knee-jerk reaction, and that's not going to resolve anything. What they really ought to do is they ought to take hands with the public sector. I mean, we as private firefighters, we really had a very good time last night working with their firefighters. And if we can operationally work together with them and cooperate, then why would they not sit down with us all and say, listen, let's take one building at a time. Would you kindly help us assess what the issues are? And let's draw up a report for one building. Let them spend the bucks over the next few weeks and sort out one building. And if they say it's only 3 buildings, well, it shouldn't take us longer than 2 months. But we know it's not 3 buildings. It's closer to the original 53 they guessed a few years ago. But they can easily sit down with us. It doesn't cost them money. They call us to a table. We address the matter with them. We put on the table what we think the solutions are. They implement the solutions, and voila, you ask the right person. I can help.
Mr. Engelbrecht, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Wynand Engelbrecht, the Chief Fire Officer for Ops SA.